Okay, let's start the session. Hi everyone, Salesforce Development Day 25. Let's see what we are going to learn today. So today our focus will be learning the previous session. We'll just quickly go through the previous session overview, and then we'll talk about the sub-programs and what is the procedures, what are the non-procedure parameters, non-parameterized procedures, how to invoke the non-parameterized procedure, and what is the parameterized procedure, and how to invoke the parameterized procedure. In this only we will see the protected, how to call the protected, and what is the use case of it, and we'll see few assignment. Then we'll move on to the OOPS concept inheritance. So in the while learning the OOPS concept inheritance, we will see the protected one and what are the properties of inheritance, and then we'll have a trailhead link. Now, what did we learn in the last session?
Object relationship and mapping,
Okay.
and creating records inside the object.
We have
How to relate the
Creating
records and
related records,
creating multiple records using for loop.
bulk record.
bulk records.
Right. So we have seen the ORM. What is the default ORM? How the Salesforce is creating the classes, business class. And then we have seen the related records, how to create a related records. If it is a single record, if it is a bulk record, how to create it. And mostly we have seen by passing the hard-coded values, because that is the first program of the how to create a record. Now let's see sub-program. So whenever we implement a Apex program, that means whenever we implement a Apex class, whether you are writing a small Apex class or a huge Apex class, it doesn't matter. Whenever we are writing the Apex class, in the Apex class, what we will do is we will divide our logic into the multiple sub-programs. We will divide our logic into the multiple sub-program. So this is the main program. Apex class is the main program. Inside this main program, we will write sub-program. That means sub-program is nothing but, assume that this sub-program 1 is having just a account creation. And the another sub-program is having the contact creation, and another sub-program is having some other logic. So whatever the logic we have, we will not write an entire logic into the one sub-program. We will divide it into the multiple sub-program, so that it is easier for anybody to understand what is the logic that is executed in one sub-program, and in another sub-program, what is the logic only it is concentrated. So basically, whenever we are writing in the real time, when we write a program based on what is the logic that needs to be executed only by the system. Now, for example, right now, hiring manager and position, both the records I need to create it. So what I'll do is, one sub-program, I'll write a logic to only just create the hiring manager. And another sub-program, I'll write it to create a position object. Now, from the hiring manager, once this is insert of the hiring manager is done, then I'll pass the ID to this position record. And then this position record is created only inserting the position record. So that what will happen is, tomorrow anybody wants to create a hiring manager, they can call this hiring manager. Or anybody wants to call the position record creating it, they can call this position record. So that's the reason whenever we write a logic, the logic has to be divided and anybody should be able to understand. That means what are the logic you are writing it, do not put all the logic into the single subprogram, divide it so that anybody, if the junior or a senior, whoever is the members are there, so everybody should be able to understand that logic. So it has to be small, the program has to be small. If it is a big also, no problem, but it has to be understandable by the anybody. So as soon as they see the method, anybody should able to understand. So that's the reason in the real time, what we will do is every subprogram there is some meaning. What is the purpose of creating that subprogram, and what is the expected output, and what is the logic that is executed by that subprogram. We will not write a multiple logic execution in this subprogram, right? Only one logic has to be executed, one functionality has to be executed by the subprogram. So that's how we will write it into the real time, right? So when we write a subprogram, subprograms are divided into the two types. One is a procedure subprogram, and the second one is a function subprogram. Functions subprogram. When we say procedures, procedures is nothing but it contains the set of statements. Now here, whatever we are writing it in this subprogram, assume that this is a procedure. In this procedure, what is the logic that we will write it? We will write some set of statements. For example, right now I'm creating the hiring manager. Right now, I'm creating the hiring manager. So when we create a hiring manager, so we will write some set of logic, right? So we will write some set of logic. What is the logic that we will write it? Let's say we are going to write a logic. Now here we are going to specify hiring manager underscore C HM equal to new hiring manager underscore C, and then we are going to execute some logic here, right? So I have a HM dot name. So what is the name of the hiring manager? Let's say it's a Mark. And what is the contact number or a email address? HM dot email address. So like this, we will be writing some set of logic. We will be writing it. So when we write a set of logic here, so what will happen? This set of logic, only this program should be executed, only this logic @gmail.com. And along with that, we will be also writing the location, HM dot location or a city name, whatever the field is available. So location equal to, let's say, Hyderabad, and then insert. So this set of logic, we will be writing it into the one subprogram. So whenever this set of logic is performed in certain operation, for example, we are performing into this first box. And procedures, there are two types of them. Procedures, whenever they are executing it, whenever the procedures are executing a set of logic, they will not return any value. That means if I have to pass, they will not return any value. So for example, I'm creating the hiring manager here, right? So after creating the hiring manager, now in order to create a position, I need to pass the hiring manager ID and I need to pass the hiring manager location to this. That means I need to pass two parameters to this position. If I wanted to pass these two parameters to this, that means after executing this logic, it has to provide the return value. Once a return value is nothing but hm.id. It has to provide hm.id. Also, it has to provide the hm.location. Now, based on these two values, only the position record gets created. But procedure subprogram, it does not return this. It does not return a value. It does not return the value. It does not return a value. So procedures are, it contains the set of statement to be used to perform certain operation and will not return any value to the calling environment, which is called as a procedure. Now you have to use a procedures subprogram whenever you do not have a written statement, whenever you are not expecting any output of that set of statement, then only you have to go for a procedures. Then only you have to go for a procedures. Now the second one, functions. Functions is the one where we are executing the logic, where we are executing the logic. So once the logic is executed, once the So once the logic is executed, so what we will do is we will return the value. That means whoever is expecting any value, whoever is expecting any value, it will return the value. It will return the value to the calling function. Whoever is calling this hiring manager, that means now here it is going to return hiring manager ID. Based on this hiring manager ID, now what you can do is, or you can store it into the collection hiring manager ID and location. How do you store it in the location? You have to store it into the location map of ID, which is a hiring manager ID, and the string, which is a location. So this is HM location equal to new map of ID, comma, string. Now by using this, what you have to do is you have to pass these details to the, now here what you will do, you will be storing the, in the HM location dot put, you will be passing the hiring manager ID, HM dot ID, comma, HM dot location. Whatever the location is there, this location you will be passing to the position record. Now here the return value will be, so once we are done with inserting this data here, now we will be returning the, once we are inserting it, then we will return HM location. HM location. Now this HM location, we will be returning to the position. Now, once this is done, position will be called. So whenever the position is called, we are passing this data to the position. Now, while creating the position, we are going to take the key, which is a hiring manager ID. Then we have a value. Value is hiring manager location. So functions will return the value to the whoever is calling it. Value to the calling environment. So two type of subprograms. One is the procedure. Procedures does not return any value. Functions will return the value, right? So just to remember here notes, all the procedures and functions should be defined inside the class. You cannot define these procedures or functions outside of the class. That means you first have to declare a class, then only the inside that you can declare the procedure or a functions. We can define one or more procedures or one or more functions inside the class. There is no limitation how many procedures, how many functions, no limitations at all. You can create whatever you want, but you know the Apex has a limitation, the character limit 6 million characters, right? So that is only the character limit, but whenever you are whenever you are implementing the procedure or functions, it has to be inside the Apex class. You cannot write it outside of the Apex class. So that means you have a structure here. You have a structure. So class, inside the class, you have to write either procedures or functions. Now, inside these functions, you will be writing the logic. You will be writing the logic. So all this logic, in case if you wanted to pass this logic to the any other class, that means behavior of the first class, then you can pass it. So here logic is nothing but it might contain the variable, declaration of variable, assigning the variable, or right. So you will be writing the business logic like a methods, we call it procedure, functions, or we call it as a methods also here, methods. So inside the methods can be a logic and variable. Also, if within the class also can have a variables, assignment of the variables. And within the class, you can have another class also. Within the class, another class also you can create it, that we will see later, which is called as a wrapper class. Wrapper class, that we will see later. So right now, we have already seen how to declare a variable within the class. Now we are going with the procedures or a functions. Now, inside the procedures, again, procedures are divided into two types, non-parameterized procedure and parameterized procedure. There are two types of procedures. Non-parameterized procedure means in this approach does not require any input value to perform a operation. That means whenever I'm executing some logic, or if I'm writing some logic, or if I'm implementing some set of statements within the subprogram, it is not expecting any of the input. That means in order to execute that in order to execute that piece of code, I do not need any input value from outside of this subprogram, which is called as a non-parameterized. For example, here hiring manager. In order to create a hiring manager, I'm not expecting any input value from outside. So that's the reason this is called as a non-parameterized. Non-parameterized is nothing but where the parameter is not required in order to execute the set of logic. In order to execute the set of logic, I do not need any parameter, which is called as a non-parameterized procedure. Now, syntax of this is, now you need to first declare the access modifier. Even for the subprograms also, subprograms will always start with the access modifier. Not only the class, not only the variable declaration, subprogram is also starts with the access modifier. So syntax will be access modifier, and then you have a void. You have a void. Void is basically, no, you are not returning anything. You are not returning anything. So non-parameterized procedure is access modifier, which is where you will be writing either public or a global or a private or protected, whatever it is there. So you will be writing those access modifier, and the void is a standard. You have to use the void. Then whatever the procedure name is there, whatever the procedure name or a method name or a procedure name or method name, that procedure name, and then open, close. Now here we are not expecting any parameter. We are not expecting any parameter. Then open curly braces and the close curly braces. Within that, we will be writing the business logic. So this is the syntax for the non-parameterized procedure. So example, let's say that I'm writing the class for the account helper. I'm writing the class for account helper. So public class, my class name is, this is the class name. Okay, first we need to write the class. We need to declare the class. Within the class, I need to declare the procedures. Now here first I'm declaring the class, public class name is accounts helper. Within that, I have a multiple subprograms. Now, for example, right now I'm writing the non-parameterized procedure. When I'm writing the non-parameterized procedure, we will be writing the access modifier is public and the void, then insert accounts. Insert accounts, then within this, I'll be writing some set of logic. Similarly, another non-parameterized procedure, public void update accounts. The first one is the insert account, and after that, I have another non-parameterized procedure, which is updating the accounts. Updating the accounts. Now, within this, I'll be writing some business logic. Within this, we will be writing some business logic. So this is the non-parameterized procedure example. Now, take a notes of it. Subprogram, take a notes of it.
Done. Okay. Non-parameterized. Take a notes of it. Done. So here, so let's go ahead and implement one program. Now, for example, let's say that we are going to implement a new Apex class. Now here, the Apex class is, for example, I'm going to implement a Apex class for the lead, for creating the lead record. So let's say here, lead helper. I'm creating the class name, which is called as a lead helper. So whenever we create a class, the first thing is that we need to write the comments. Who is the person that is implementing the class? Who is the person implementing the class? Let's say here, we are going to write whoever is the author, the person author name, let's say here, Swapna IT. Now, created date, when we are creating it, created date. Now, let's say today is 31st July 2023. And then what is the description? Purpose of this. So description is this class used for lead DML operations, right? And then we can say here last modified by last modified date. Whoever is the last modifying it, the date of this. So that means whoever is, right now we are creating the class, but later somebody will be changing the
class, right? Either they will be changing the single line or a multiple lines. Whenever they change it, they need to add the last modified date, and then who is the person, and what is the comments, like, right? So we are going to write this logic. Now this is the class. Inside the class, right now I'm going to create a procedure. Right now I'm going to create a procedure. Let's say that access modifier, I'm going to use a public void. I'm creating the new lead. Let's say that I'm creating the new lead. So create new lead record. Create a new lead record. I'm not expecting any parameter here. This is not required any parameter here. Right? So public void, whatever my method name is there, that method name. Now per method also we need to add a comments. Now what is the purpose of creating a method? What is the purpose of creating the method? Now let's say here description. Description is created new lead. I'm creating the new lead by using this method. And the author is whoever is the author name. Now in this, I'm going to create a single record, lead equal to new lead. Now in the lead, we have a few mandatory information. Let's say lead dot first name. We have a first name. So first name is equal to, let's say that Himaja, right? And then LD dot last name equal to, let's say Salesforce, right? So I think Himaja is already there. Let's go here, duplicate it. Let's go to the our application. Now let's see lead. Let's go for all open leads. Okay, Himaja is not there. That's fine. Now, so let's go ahead and see now the developer console. Now last name is Salesforce, and let's give few more details here. Email equal to, let's say hs@gmail.com. hs@gmail.com. LD dot, let's say we also have a company details. Company is a mandatory. So company equal to, let's say Wipro. Right. So what else details we needed? Now click on the new lead. Company is mandatory, last name is mandatory, lead status is automatically taken. Now that's all the information. Now I can insert the record. Let's add the lead source. LD dot lead source equal to web. And then I'm going to insert the record. Now I'm inserting the single record. It's not into the bulk. We are not inserting the bulk. It's a single record. Now this class is done. Now this is how we write this is how we write non-parameterized procedure. non-parameterized procedure. Now, once we write the non-parameterized procedure, how can we invoke? Whether from the different class or wherever we are calling it, possible that I'm calling this method from the different class, or else I'm calling from the anonymous window. Whenever we call it from the anywhere, how can we invoke the non-parameterized procedure? This is the non-parameterized procedure where it has a void, So whenever we have a void, how can we invoke it? How can we invoke? So invoking will be, you need to specify here whatever the class name is there, the class name, and then now if you say here class name dot, I'm going to call directly the method. Class name dot directly the method. Now if I try to execute this, what will happen? Will I get a error or will it executed successfully? Will it be executed successfully or will it throw an error? Whenever we say here, it's going to give me the error because in the procedure, while implementing the method or a procedure or a function, whatever it is, non-parameterized procedure, whenever we are implemented, this is fine. So this is access modifier here, which is going to explain who should be able to access this class. Now this is going to explain it whether which type of a subprogram, whether it is a parameterized procedure or a non-parameterized procedure or whether it is a functions, no, right? So it is going to explain this. But what is this? This is going to explain the one, how can you call from the other class or other place, how can you call it? So whenever you have a void, you cannot directly call the class dot, method name. Class dot method name, you cannot do it because which is not accepted. Now directly you cannot do this. Void, whenever we mention the void, you cannot call directly this one. Now, this is only you can directly call when you have a static. But what is this? This is a non-static method. This is non-static method. Now, non-static method cannot be referenced directly the method name directly within the class. You cannot reference that directly. Now, these are the non-static methods. Whenever you have a non-static method, you cannot directly call the method name from the class. So what you need to do is you first need to initialize it. Then you need to call it. So let's say here lead helper. Now first I need to create a object. Now here, whenever you have a non-static, this is for the non-static method. Whenever you have a non-static method, step 1, create a object for the class. So lead helper, let's say LD helper equal to new lead helper. Now, once we are done with this, initialization is done. That means creating an object for the class is done. Now, step 2 is invoke the method. For invoking the method, you need to use the object name. Object name dot, whatever the method is there, that method. Now, if I try to execute this, now the record will be created inside the Salesforce and it is a successful execution. How many DML statements executed? 1. How many rows got created? 1. Right, so if I see here, if I go to the leads and if I try to execute this lead, it will try to execute this, right? So here, now if I see Himaja is created here. Himaja is created, and let's go to the detail section. Now here, created date and modified date is just now it is created. So static is basically static, non-static is decides now whether do you want to create an object or not for the class. If it is a non-static, yes, you need to create an object for the class whenever you are invoking it. If it is a non-static, then you need to create a object for the class. If it is a static, then you need not to create an object for the class. So that is only the purpose we use it in the. Now let's say here, if I'm going to specify here static, instead of non-static, I'll say static. I'll say static, public, static, void. Now static, whenever I mention it, now if I try to execute this logic, it will give an error because static method does not require the initialization of the object. Static method does not require the initialization of the object. Now this is for the static. Now static method, only one step is there. Class name dot, whatever the method name is there, that method name. Now if I try to execute it, now let's say here 1, 2, 3. Let's save this. Now if I try to execute this static method, it will be executed. So static, non-static will be decided whether you wanted to, while invoking the method, do you want to create an object or not is decided by the static or non-static method. Now once it is execution is done, then we can see the record is gets created. Gets created. And this is the one. Right now it is created the record. Now DML statement rows are executed 1 out of 10,000, and then statements are 1. One statement is executed out of 150. Out of 150 statement is executed. Now that's about the invoking the non-parameterized. Now let's take the assignment, the first one which we have already created. And the second one, in case if you want to create a 50 records, you already know this, right? So if you want to create a 50 contact records inside the object, now what you have to do, you have to put for loop, right? So let's take this as an assignment. The second one is a assignment. Assignment is write an Apex program to create a 50 contact records inside the object. Now you need to use the non-parameterized procedure. By using the non-parameterized procedure, you need to create a 50 contacts. Now, as I have mentioned, static is nothing but can be invoked directly by using the class name dot method name. Now again, I'm repeating it. Whenever you are declaring the procedure, or a non-procedure, for example, right now I'm creating the method, right? Whenever I'm creating the method, it's not expecting any parameter. Whenever it is not expecting any parameter, and if it is a void, that means it is a non-static method. Whenever we have a non-static method, what you have to do is you need to create a 2 steps, whether from the anonymous window or from the different class. So what you have to do is you need to first create an object for this, for the non-static method. Non-static method is nothing but a void method. And then step 2 is invoke the method. And if it is a static method, that means static void. If it is a static void, you can just call class name dot method. class name dot, whatever this class name is there, right? So this class name is, this is the class name, and then we have a method name directly I'm calling it, which is a one step. This is for the static method. That means here you have a static word. You have a static word. Clear, Srivalli? Because we are not passing any parameter here. Everything is declared inside this. So that's the reason you are just calling the method. We will see going further what all the information we can pass it. For this scenario, we just need to call the method. Clause dot method name. Clear? Any questions, Srivalli? Okay. So let's move on. Right. So here, Kranti, you are clear on the static and non-static context. Vasavi, you are clear? Parameterized, non-parameterized.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now let's move on to the next one. Assignments. So let's go ahead and see the assignments. Now write an Apex program to insert the position record inside the object. Position record inside the object. Now create an Apex program to insert 100 cases records inside this. Now instead of 100, let's go with the 10 case records. Let's go with 10 case records inside the object. Now this is the bulk insert. Now also create an Apex program to insert the hiring manager record and the related position. Now most of you have written incorrect on this Apex program. Right, so you just written the inserting the hiring manager, inserting the position record, right? But here insert the position record, I have mentioned it initially by passing the hiring manager location. Whatever the hiring manager location is there, that location you need to pass it to the position record. So you need to create that one. So here it should be related position record with hiring manager location. With hiring manager location. Now we will see that how to pass the record. Take a notes of it. The third one we will see. Now you will see this how to create it. How to pass the hiring manager ID and how to pass the hiring manager location to the another method. We will see that. Now, second one is parameterized procedure. Now, parameterized procedure is nothing but by using this feature, we can create a procedure, right? So right now, what are the procedure we have created? We can create the procedure, but it will take the input values during the runtime. It will take the input values during the runtime and will perform the operation based on the input value. That means in order to perform some set of action, in order to perform set of actions, now there is some set of instructions are written here inside this. But in order to execute this set of instruction, we need some input from the outside. Now, here parameterized procedure is nothing but parameterized procedure will take the input values at the runtime. During the runtime, it will take the input values and based on this input values, it will execute the set of statement and then it will print the values. Whatever the values it needs to be done, it will try to execute it. It will try to execute. That means we can supply one or more input values. There is no restriction that how many input parameters can be processed. You can process as many as input procedures. You input parameters, you can pass it to the procedure at runtime. For example, let's say syntax, access modifier, now here void, procedure name or a method name. Now this is what we have written so far. Access modifier, void, and the procedure name or a method name, right? And then we'll have a normal. We have written this, and inside this write the logic. And this is non-parameterized procedure. Whereas a parameterized procedure is nothing but inside this we are going to expect some parameters. Inside this we are going to expect some parameters. That means inside this we will be writing the some data type, and then what is the parameter it is expected. So let's say example, I am writing the class for the mathematical operation. Now this is the class. Inside this class, I have a multiple procedures. So first procedure is a public static void addition. So this is the addition. For this addition, we are writing some logic for the addition. But here it is expecting the parameter, which is a one parameter, which is a data type is integer, and the variable name is x. This is one parameter, and the second parameter is integer y. Here it is expecting the two parameters. If you have a two parameters passed to this method, then only this logic gets executed. Similarly, we have another procedure, public static void check equals. So this is the equal to, we are checking it. So here also we are expected the parameter. Now two parameters, it will be expected string, data type is string, and the variable name is S1, string S2. Now public static void delete what are the bulk accounts are there. We wanted to delete the bulk account. In that case, I need to know the list of IDs. What are the list of IDs are there? Those list of IDs. So parameter could be a primitive data type or could be a collection or could be a array. So you can pass the collection, which is a list of ID, could be a S object, could be a primitive data type, could be a collection, anything you can pass in the parameter. Now, similarly, one more method, you are getting the related records, related cases for an account. So that means here we are writing a logic for the case, but I need to get the input value, which is a account. So based on this account, whoever is passing the account ID, based on this account ID, I need to get the related case records. Logic has to be written here, right? So I need to get the related case. So these are the couple of examples for the parameterized procedure. So for the parameterized procedure, we need an input. Without an input, we cannot perform or we cannot execute a certain logic. We cannot execute a certain logic. Take a notes of it, then we will see the one program. You can write a static or void, which are the one you can write it. You can use whatever, it's up to you. It's basically decided by the developer. Do you want to go with the word or do you want to go with the static word? Take a notes of it. No, static, non-static is only that one. Now, let's see the example of it. Let's say here, I'm going to create a new class, new Apex class. Now, let's say I'm just implementing the mathematical expression. So I'll write a math helper class. Now, for math helper class, we need to declare the description, author, and created by, last modified by whoever is there. Now, this is the method. Inside this, we are going to write some procedures. Now here, public, I'll say static void, and then let's say here, I'm going to put addition. For the addition, we need two parameters. We are expecting the parameter from the outside. Let's say I'm expecting here integer x and the integer y. Two parameters I'm expecting from the outside. Now, once I have this parameter, once we have this parameter or these variables, now what we are going to perform is we are going to perform the addition. Let's say I'm directly going to print the addition system.debug. Let's say sum of values. Now here I'm going to specify x plus y. Whatever the output is there, that is the output. This is one procedure or one method. Similarly, now let's say here this is description and author. Let's write the author and the description for this. Now here what we are doing, description is this method is used for addition. And similarly, let's write the another method. Another method is for, let's say, multiplication. I'm going to copy this. This is for the multiplication. Now, instead of addition, let's say here, I'm going to put mul. Now, I'm expecting the integer x, integer y, and let's expect another parameter, integer, let's say z. Now, here we are expecting the multiplication of let's say here x multiplied by y multiplied by z. Similarly, we have another method, let's say here concatenation. So concatenation is which is expecting the different parameters. So let's say here I have another one, public. I'll say here void instead of a static, I'll just say void concatenate. No, concatenate is nothing but combining the two values. I'm not adding it, it's just concatenating it. That means I need to have a parameter which is a string data type, string S1, string S2. Now here system.debug. Let's say here concatenation of let's say combining two values. Plus S1 plus S2. Now here we are doing the, let's add the comment. This is for the concatenation. right? Similarly, if you want to check few more methods, you can do it. Now, let's say here, for example, now here I have a class math helper. So what I can do is go to the debug. Now here, let's say this is for the static methods. Now we have a two type of a method. One is a static method, another one is a non-static method. This is for non-static method. Now for static method, what we can do is directly we can take the class name dot. For example, if I have a addition of, now I'm going to pass the integer values here. Integer of 10 comma, let's say 400. That is for the addition. Similarly, I'm going to call multi dot multi. Now here, let's say 10 multiply by 10 multiply by 10. Similarly, if I try to use the concatenate also, if I try to use the concatenate dot concatenate, if I say here string, let's say hello and space, let's say Salesforce. And what will happen if I try to execute? So addition multi will be executed, but concatenate will give the error. Execute the highlighted one. What it is saying that line number 15 is a non-static. So that means this line, the concatenate. So concatenate is error. So what we have to do is this one we need to take out. It's not a static method, it's a non-static. Now for non-static, what we have to do is I need to create a object. So that means math helper mh equal to new math helper mh dot. I need to use the concatenate. Whatever the concatenate is there. And then I'm going to pass the values here. Then I'm going to pass the values here. Hello. Let's say Salesforce. Now, if I try to execute all three, I'm going to get the value. Now, let's say here debug. The first one is sum and the next one is multiplication. And then combining the two values. Hello, Salesforce. Now, this is parameterized procedure. Now, whatever we have written, that is the parameterized procedure, and invoking the parameterized procedure is the same. Invoking the parameterized procedure or a non-parameterized procedure, both are same. Now, invoking the procedure, we have to supply the required values. For non-parameterized, we need not to pass the values. For the parameterized procedure, we need to pass the values while executing or while invoking the parameterized procedure. If it is a static method, we can directly call the class name dot procedure name and then pass the values. If you have declared the, if it is a non-static, then you need to declare the object. So in that case, object name dot procedure name, and then you need to pass the values, right? So let's assume that example, we have written the static method, static parameterized procedure. Then in that case, directly whatever the class name is there, class name dot addition, then you need to pass some values. Similarly, check equals. So for check equals also, you need to pass the two strings. Now create Apex class to perform all mathematical and string operations on the input values. So that's what we have seen right now, the example. Take a assignments, create an Apex class to insert a new hiring manager record inside the object on the details specified at the runtime. That means you need to create a hiring manager. Now, what is the values to be declared? So usually what we will do is inside this class only, I'll specify the name, email address, location, and then I'll insert it, right? Instead of specifying in the program, pass this name, email address, location from outside. Pass these details from the outside. Then you create an Apex class to insert a new hiring manager record inside the object based on the details specified at the runtime. That means during the runtime, you need to pass the values. Now, second one is create an Apex class to insert a new position record inside the object on the detail specified at the runtime. So during the runtime, you pass the hiring manager ID and the hiring manager location, position name. During the runtime, you need to pass the values, and those values you need to insert inside the parameterized procedure. Now, the third one is create a Apex class to insert new student record inside the object based on the specified details or specified during the runtime, whatever the details you are specifying it, based on that it should be created. And in the runtime, in the real time, we use the parameterized procedure most of the time because we don't hard code anything during the initialization. During the initialization, we don't hard code it. Because we don't know what kind of a name we should be creating it, right? Sometimes few developer wants to create a different name, right? During the runtime, that means whenever the users are entered the name, those names, that name we have to take it and then we need to insert. So that means whenever we are creating the class or whenever we are declaring the class, what we do is we do not specify inside the class. That means, for example, if I say here, now let's go ahead and create a new Apex class. Let's say I'm creating the hiring manager helper. Now hiring manager helper. Now let's say that let's add the description. Description is this class is used for hiring manager helper class. Now, inside this, we are going to write another method or a procedure public. Let's say I'm going to use the static void and create a hiring manager record. Create hiring manager record. Create a hiring manager record. Now, let's say here, usually what we will do, hiring manager __ C, HR equal to new hiring manager __ C. This is, I'm creating the new instance, then HR dot name equal to, let's say we are going to say Mark, HR dot email address equal to mark@gmail.com, HR dot location equal to, let's say Hyderabad, and then HR dot, what else we have, contact number equal to, let's say some number here, and HR dot current CTC. Let's see what are the values are mandatory. Hiring managers, click on a new. Current CTC is mandatory. Right, current CTC contact email address equal to, let's say current CTC is some number, I'm specifying it, insert HR. This is how we write it in generic because I'm hard coding the value. There is an error. Let's go ahead here, check, edit, object. Let's copy this hiring manager. Let's go to the developer console, hiring manager. Now let's save this. So this is how we write it, right? This is a non-parameterized procedure. Now, if I try to execute this logic, what will happen? The record gets created inside this. The record gets created inside this. Now let's go ahead and execute it. Debug. Hiring manager helper dot create HR record. Create HR record. Now if I try to execute this, now what will happen? It will execute the record. But if I execute it multiple times, what will happen? Same record is getting created. Same record is getting created. Right? If I execute this 100 times, used to create hiring manager record. If I execute this method 100 times, same mark will be created, right? Same mark will be created. But in the real time, we don't do like this. We don't do the hard coding of any time. Do not do any hard coding in the real time, whether it is you are passing the name or you are passing the record ID or whatever you are passing it, never do the hard coding of it. This is just for practicing it, we did it, right? So for whatever we have did it, we did it for the practice. But in the real time, what we do is we will pass the values from the outside. String name. Now this is H name. This is H name. Now this H name, whatever we are passing it, we will assign to the hiring manager. We will assign to the hiring manager. Now similarly, string H email. Now whatever this email is there, we will pass the email. We will pass the email. Now similarly, string contact number, H number. Now whatever this H number is there, we will pass the H number. And similarly, I'm going to pass the string H location. String H location. Now, whatever this H location is there, we will pass the location here. And then finally, if you want a current CTC to be also taken from the outside, then what you have to do? Integer HCTC. Now, whatever this HCTC is there, take it from the outside. Now click on save. Now click on save. Now this is how we write it in the real time. There won't be any hard-coded value. There won't be any hard-coded value. So usually if you have a required field, so what will happen is whenever you are inserting a record from the developer console, that means from the programmatically, ultimately it will give you some error that your required field is missing, If I refresh here, there is a record which is created the mark. Let's go ahead and see. The mark is created. Let's assume that I'm not creating the current CTC. I'm not inserting the current CTC. Now, these values. Now here, these values, I need to pass it from the outside. Right? So in that case, let's save here, debug, Now this is here already. This is non-parameterized procedure, and this is parameterized procedure. Parameterized procedure. And the next one is parameterized procedure. Now here for this, what we are going to do is HM helper equal to new, whatever the class name is there, I need to specify. No, I don't require this because it's a static. No. Here, what are the details that I need to pass it? I need to pass this information, hiring manager name. Let's say hiring manager name is Rachel. Now, comma, location, let's say location is Hyderabad. Location is Hyderabad. And before Hyderabad, there is an email. Now you need to provide the email, rachel@gmail.com. Now you need to provide exactly same format. Like here, name is there. That means this is going to take a name. Now second parameter is email. So this is the email. And the third parameter is location. And this is the location. After that, we have a number. Now I need to provide some number here. And then CTC. CTC is around 60 lakhs. Now here, this is the data which I'm processing the information. Now, if you say here, this number, if you are processing it here, then you will get an error. You will get an error. Whatever the sequence of expected parameter, that the same expected, we have to provide it. Now, if you try to execute it, it will give an error. What is an error? String, integer, string, string, string. Now, is that the same? No, it has a different parameter. Now, if you are in case, if it is this is also string, right? If you are providing this in the string, now what will happen here? Name will be taken this Rachel. Email is taken into the 60,000. So this is not the right way. This is not right. So whatever the expected format is there, that the same format you need to pass the information. Now, if I try to execute this, now I'm passing it exactly. Name is Rachel, email is email, location is Hyderabad, H number is a contact number, and then integer current CTC. Now I'm executing it. If I try to execute it, still I'll get an error because it is missing the expected, whatever the mandatory information is there. Mandatory information is missing. So it will show me that required field is missing. A required field is missing. Now, if you wanted to know the required field information, either you go to the page layout, right? So you go to the page layout or you go to the new record. Click on this new record, then you will see what are the mandatory information is there. From the developer console, there is no way to know that. Now let's go ahead and check file, open. Now I'm going to check the object. Now let's say here hiring manager. Now hiring manager, click on the open. Does it say anywhere? ID, owner ID is deleted, name, last modified, location, current CTC. No, it doesn't say anywhere whether it is a required field or not. It does not have any field to say that whether it is a required field or not. So only from the object manager page layout or else while creating the new record, you can see that what are the star marks are there, right? Based on that, you can say that it is a mandatory fields, but from the developer console, we cannot know. Now, if I try to execute this, here Rachel is already there. Let's say Bruce. Now I'm executing this. Now the record gets executed successfully. Now I can see that new record. Now if I refresh here, Bruce will be there. Right, Bruce is there. Now if I go to the Bruce, we have what are the data that we have passed it. This is the current CTC. Rachel, and this is the contact number and the location. So that's how we do it in the real time. So whatever the assignment which I have provided right now, so what you need to do is, you need to pass the information. You need to pass the information from the outside during the runtime, during the execution of the method. You need to pass the information. Those data you need to provide it to the set of instruction. That means what are the logic you have written. For that, you need to provide the details. So in the real time also, we will write it like this. We will not hard code anything here. No. Take assignments, then we will go for the next step. Done. Okay. Now, how to invoke the static methods?
Class name dot method or procedure name.
Right. So class name dot procedure or method name. What are the different type of subprograms?
Parameterized and non-parameterized. Functions, procedures.
Two types. Procedures and functions.
Functions.
And what are the different type of procedures?
Parameterized and non-parameterized.
Right. Now, functions is nothing but, so far we have seen the procedure. Functions are nothing but where you are returning the value. That means there is a expected output you are returning to the another one. Now you have a two methods here. Now this is set of instruction is executed. Now this data you need to pass it to the position. That means you have another logic here. You have another logic, public, static, void, create a position record. Now for position record, what we will be doing is, we will be expecting some parameter. And let's assume that I'm expecting the hiring manager ID. Now let's say here string HR ID. For now, I'm accepting only hiring manager procedure. Now, what I need here, I need to create a position record. For creating the position record, let's go ahead and check. positions, create a new record. Position name, position status, number of vacancies, location, hiring manager, open date, milestone. Okay, so many are there, mandatory fields. Now let's say here, position underscore C, POS equal to new position object, new position. Now here POS dot position name. Now I'm going to say name. Name I'm going to accept it from the outside. That means I'm going to accept here string position name. P name. Now similarly POS dot hiring manager equal to whatever this hiring manager ID is there, I'm going to specify the hiring manager ID. Let me do one thing. Let me take out the mandatory fields from the position. Now let's say fields. Inside these fields, I have a position status. Let's say position status, open the position status. And let's take out the required. Click on save, that is done. Number of vacancies. Fields and relationship. Now let's say here, number of vacancies. Required, let me remove the required field. Now let's click on save. And what else we have? Location. Hiring manager ID, hiring contact number, let it be there. Open date, minimum pay, milestone date, maximum budget. Open date. Let's take this. Click on save. Minimum budget. Minimum pay. It's not there. Let's go to the page layout. Custom position layout. Let's take out this minimum pay. List on date. Milestone date, maximum budget. Click on edit. Let's take out the required field. Fields and relationship. Maximum budget. Click on edit. Let's take out this required field and then I'll remove the skills also. Click on edit. Okay, perfect. Now let's refresh. No, hiring manager, location, it did not refresh. Fine. So I'm passing the hiring manager ID and position name. Let's say here I'm inserting position. Inserting position. Now, in order to execute this logic, in order to execute this, create a position record, I need a hiring manager ID. That means after completing this, I need to know what is the hiring manager ID, and that hiring manager ID, I need to pass the information. So whatever the new hiring manager ID is created, that new hiring manager ID, I need to pass it to the second method, which is called as a create position record. Create position record. Now, how do we do that? Now, in order to do that, first of all, this method has to return the hiring manager ID. After inserting it, I need to return hiring manager ID. Now, whenever I wanted to return the hiring manager ID, right? Whenever I wanted to return the hiring manager ID, now it is the void. It is void. And then I'm returning the value. Whenever we are returning the value, return value does not, we should not have a void here. Void is nothing but I'm not returning anything. But instead of void, if you have specified, now I'm returning the string. I'm returning the string. That means this is a non-void. Whenever you have a void, you cannot return anything. When you do not have a void, that means you are returning the value. That means you are returning the hiring manager ID. You are returning hiring manager ID. So what you can do is right now, I'll be executing this, and whatever the return value is there, whatever the return value is there, I'll store the return value into the string. I'll store the return value into the string, and this I'll be passing to the another method, which is called as a create a position. Create a position. Now, whatever the output of this create a HR record output is there, that output I'm storing into the string because it is returning the hiring manager ID. Once I have the hiring manager ID, now that hiring manager ID I'll be passing to the whatever the string is there, that the same string I'm passing it here. Hiring manager ID, comma, and then we have a position name. We have a position name. Now let me print this, whatever you are getting the hiring manager system dot debug. Let's say here, hiring manager record. Hiring manager record plus HR ID. HR ID. Now let's execute this. Click on execute the highlighted one. Invalid. I did not save the record. I did not save this class. Now let's execute this. Execute the highlighted one. Now contact number is missing. Let's pass the contact number. POS dot contact number. HR contact number. Let's say I'm going to pass the HR contact number string. Contact number. Position contact number. Position contact number. Let's say here, Pcon. What else we have in mandatory field? Let me take out this. So instead of contact number, what I'll do is email ID. So this is P email. Debug, then I need to pass the P email ID. Now this is the email ID. Now it might have created the position hiring manager record. Let's go ahead and see. I did not create it. Okay. Now let's go ahead and execute it. If I execute this, now it is giving the hiring manager ID, and then it must have created the position record by linking the hiring manager ID. Right, Bruce 12 is created. For Bruce 12, if I go to the related list, I can see the position. I can see the position record. I can see the position record. Now, instead of calling from the developer console, what I'm doing is I'm storing the information here, then I'm returning the value here. Instead of doing that, so what I can do is I can pass it to this. That means directly I can call it here. I'm not going to return. I'll say here, call the method. And while calling the method, I'll pass the HR ID. What are the HR ID is there? HR.ID, comma. HR ID, and then I need to pass the name of it. So I'll pass the same name, comma. Then I need to pass the email. Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Then I'm going to pass the H email. Now, this is directly I can call, but I do not need a return. I do not need a return. Instead of returning it, what I'm doing is I'm directly calling the another method. I'm directly calling the another method and I'm passing the hiring manager ID, and then whatever the name of the hiring manager name is there, name and the P email. So like this, I'm directly calling it from the another method. From create a HR record. Once the record is created, I'm calling another method And while calling the method, I'm passing the information. I'm passing the information, right? So I'm passing the hiring manager ID, name, email. Now let's save this. Let's create another one. Now this time I'm not going to execute the create a position record. I'm just executing the hiring manager record. I'm just executing the hiring manager record. So only this line I'll be getting, I'll execute this. I'll execute only this line. Now this time, let's say here. Nick, and let's say Nick 78 Hyderabad. Now I'm going to execute this. Now if I execute this line, what will happen? The cursor will go on here. The cursor, first it will go. Now first it will check whether do I have a class. Yes, there is a class is there. Inside this class, is it a non-static method? Yes, it is a non-static method and we have a method here. And then we are passing all the information. Hiring manager name, email, location, number, and then current CTC, whatever the CTC is there. Those all details we are passing it. Once it is passed, then it will execute this entire logic. And then it will insert the record. Once the record is inserted successfully, then what it will happen, it will call the another method which is called as a create position record. Now, while calling this create a position record, now we are passing the certain details. That means once the hiring manager record is created, we are passing the hiring manager name, email. So that means I'm executing the create HR record, hiring manager record. But from the hiring manager, we are calling the another method which is called as a position record, which is calling the position record. This position record will call and it will get executed. Now if I execute this, execute the highlighted one. Now if I go to the hiring manager, now in the hiring manager, Nick is created and within the related list, there is a position record is also created. That means what is happening here, I have a Apex class. I have Apex class. In the Apex class, we have two methods. This is one method. This is another method. Right? This is the hiring manager method and this is the position method. And these two methods are expecting the parameters. This is expecting the parameter like a name, location, right? Contact number, and the CTC. These all are, it is expected from the hiring manager. That means this is a parameterized procedure. Parameterized procedure. Position is also expecting it like a hiring manager ID, name, location. These all details, it is expecting the values. Right now we have another one, which is in order to execute this hiring manager, what we are doing is we are calling from the developer console. This is the console anonymous window. From the anonymous window, what we are doing is the Apex class, whatever the Apex class name is there, the Apex class dot hiring manager, and inside this we are passing the certain name. Now here we are passing the David, comma, location, which is a Hyderabad, comma, number, which is a, let's say some number we are giving it, which is a string format, and then CTC. CTC is 60,000. So this is the data which we are passing it. This is from the anonymous window, we are executing it. So when we execute it from the anonymous window, now as soon as I execute this line, what will happen? It will go to this particular class and this particular method, and whatever the data we are passing it, the data gets passed to the parameter. And what are the logic is there? It gets executed the logic, right? Once the logic is executed, this position method, we are calling it from the hiring manager. We are calling it from the hiring manager by passing the HR ID, name, and then location, right? So whenever this line is executed, it gets executed the hiring manager set of instruction, the data, what are the logic we have written, it will execute the logic. Then it also execute the position. That means first step is I'm executing it from the anonymous. When we execute it from the anonymous, the second step is first it will call the Apex class. Then it will execute the hiring manager record. Now hiring manager is done. Then finally it will go to the position record and the position record gets executed. So on the UI, what will happen is first the hiring manager record is created. Hiring manager record is created, and once the hiring manager record ID is created perfectly without any issue, that ID passed to the position. That ID passed to the position in the in the related list. We can see the position record. In the related list, we can see the position record. So that's how we write in the real time. Now here right now I'm calling it from the anonymous window, but in the real time we call it from the Visualforce, Lightning Aura, LWC, different places we call it. Different places we call this. So you have to implement this assignment. What are the assignments are there? So those assignments you need to create it like that. So try to pass the information during the runtime. During the runtime. Now here I am passing the string. There is a possibility that it is expecting the map. Instead of a string, it is expecting the map. There is a possibility that now here you are expecting the string. But what you can do is you can pass the map of ID, comma, string. Map of ID, comma, string and HR details. HR details, comma. We can pass the you can just pass the information of comma string name. Now instead of this hiring manager ID email, so what you can do is you can get the hiring manager ID here and hiring manager email in the map and pass that map to the this method, and then we can store that information. We will see that how to do it tomorrow. But right now in the simple, you can pass a string hiring manager ID separately, and then hiring manager email is separately and store the values directly. Try to implement this map by passing the map details. If you are not able to do it, we will do it tomorrow. Fine. So that's all for today.
Ma'am, I have one question. So here line number 24 is basically the another method to create position record. So
Yes.
according to the execution of lines, first the line number 21 will execute. And then after executing 21, it will call the another method. It will execute that method. Again, line number 22 and again line number 24 will be executed. So here 24 line will be executed twice, right?
No. I'm not executing. Second time, I'm not executing it here. I'm just executing the create HR record. It is create a HR record. When the create HR record is executed, so what will happen is the line of execution will be first, it will be executed line by line. It will reach up to the insert. Once it reach up to the insert, so that means data is inserted inside the database. Once the data is inserted inside the database, then it will check there is a method which is called. So as soon as it's verified there is a method, it will go to this particular method and it will execute the logic which is present inside this.
Okay.
If you call it again from the outside, now for example, if you call this hiring manager helper, Now dot, I'm calling the create position record. When you call this create position record, but that time you need a hiring manager ID. You don't have a hiring manager ID here because I'm not returning the hiring manager ID here. In case if you want to call both the methods from the outside. Now there are two ways to implement this. Method 1 and method 2. Two methods are there. Now method 1, method 2, if you want to call it both the method, both methods if you want to call from outside. When I say from outside, either anonymous window or a visual force or a aura or a LWC, right? If method 2, now this is here, what is the logic is, in the method 2, there is a one parameter which is required from the method 1. Required from the method 1. Now in the method 1, you are inserting the record. Inserting the record. Now when you insert the record, there is a ID gets generated. Now that ID we need it. One of the parameter is method 1 ID. Method 1 dot ID. Right? So here in the method 2, one of the parameter is expecting the method 1 ID. When the method 1 ID is expected, and if you want to call these two methods from the outside, in that case, what you have to do is in the method 1, insert the record. Insert the record and then return the value. Return the value. What is you are going to return it? If you need a single ID, then you need to return the whatever the method 1 dot ID. For example, hiring manager dot ID you wanted to return. So you need to return the value. So for that, you need to go for a function. That means your method has to be, for in order to return what you need to do, your method should be public, static, right? And then it should not be a void. It should be a string. And then here I'm creating the hiring manager record. Now here you need to return HR.id. Now example, here you are inserting the hiring manager. Right? Now you need to return this. Once you return this, what will happen? It will go back to the anonymous window. It will go back to the anonymous window or a VF or a Aura or LWC. Now, once this receive the output from this method 1, now what will LWC will do? LWC will call the method 2. LWC will call the method 2. Just a second. Now, method 2 will call the method 1, right? So here method 1 is called by the LWC. Then what LWC has to pass? LWC has to pass, or Aura or VF anonymous, whatever is there, they have to pass the whatever the method 1 has returned the value, that ID, comma, then it has a name, right? Method 2, these two parameters, it has to be written. Then in that case, method 1 will be executed one time, method 2 will be executed one time. If you have this type of a method is written in this method 1. Now there is another way is, this is the first way. This is when you are calling from the outside. Now for the first one is, so when you have the first one is, let's say, now here you have a apex. Here you have a apex and this is the method 1. And this is method 2. Now, right now I'm explaining the one way of implementation. Let's say this first one of implementation. Now, this is the Apex class. In this Apex class, what we are doing is, now we are doing the hiring manager and the position. Now, execution of these two methods, execution of invoking these two methods. If we are invoking these two methods from the outside, that means either anonymous window or a VF or a another Apex class, or could be a Aura, could be a LWC, could be a flows, anything. If you are calling it from the outside, that means method 1, I'm calling it, method 2, I'm calling it. I'm calling the method 1 and the method 2 from the outside of this class, right? So here I'm calling the method 1. And then I'm calling the method 2. Now, whenever I'm calling the method 2 is expecting the method 1 ID. It is one of the parameter is expected the method 1 ID. Now, in this case, what we need is, first I'm calling the method 1 here. When I call the method 1 logic gets executed and it has to return the value to the method 1. Whatever the return value is there, that return value has to be returned to the whoever is calling this first method. Now, once I have this return value, that means this method has to return the whatever the outcome is there, it has to return the value. When it is return the value, then you can call the method 2 by passing the return value here, by passing the return value. This is one. Now, the second one is, now the second scenario is, for example, I have a Apex class. Now, this is the Apex class. And this is another anonymous window. Right, so this is Apex class and this is the anonymous window. Now, inside this Apex class, we have a two methods. Same logic, I'm taking it. Two methods, I have it here. When we have a two methods from the anonymous or from the VF or Apex class or a Aura or LWC or a flow. From here, I'm just calling the single method. I'm just calling the only one method, which is the method 1, I'm calling it. I'm not calling the method 2. I'm just calling the method 1. From the others source, I'm calling the method 1. Now, once the method 1 is executed, once the method 1 is executed, now this method 1 has to call the position. This method 1 call the position. So that's what we have written here. Now insert it, right? Once you insert is done, then you are calling the another method here. Another method. So that means one time you are executing it. Clear? Whoever is asked, Kranti, is that you? Any questions?
Here, we are not creating the position field values.
We are creating the position, right?
Yeah, but the values where we are entering.
Here we are passing it from the method 1. Whenever I'm calling this, right? Whenever we are calling this, if there is any expected parameter, those parameters you need to pass it.
But you have given one example. Here it is storing the same hiring manager name only to the position also.
Yes, I'm passing the same. In case if you wanted to pass the different value, you can pass it here. Or what you can do is, whenever you are calling this method, you accept another one here, string position name. Now you can pass that position name here.
So even if you want to specific means assign the value in the position record, those also we have to assign it in the HR record also.
Can you repeat it?
You want to assign a values in the position record, means position name and that position details values. Before that, in the HR.
Okay, let me show you one thing. Now I'm not providing the any value. Okay, so here I'm not providing it. I'm just providing the hiring manager ID. Okay, in this case, what will happen if I try to execute this? Now, if I try to save this, no, no, hiring manager helper. Okay, I'm calling this method from here. Till this point, is it clear?
Yeah, clear now. Clear.
Okay, I'm just passing the hiring manager ID. Now, what it is saying here, method does not exist or incorrect signature. Why it is saying incorrect signature? Because this method is expecting the 3 parameters. Right? If you want to call this method from the create a hiring manager record, you need to pass the expected parameter. Without passing the parameters, we cannot execute this, or else do not call it from here. Call it from the external system, external source. When I say external source, call it from the VF page or a Aura or a LWC.
But here, whenever we want to call that second method in only in one method.
Now, if you want to call the second method in the first method, then in that case,
we cannot give assign a we cannot create the position name and all those things, no ma'am.
if you want to pass the variables, like now you need to pass the position name and position email. If you want to pass the position name and position email, so what you need to do is either you expect it from the outside, or else sometimes the scenarios will be whatever the hiring manager you are creating it, create the position name same, or else you just create a position name accepted from the outside. Now I'm accepting the position name from the outside. Now you pass the position name. Whenever the hiring record is created, a hiring record you want me to create it, that time pass the position name also, so that I can pass the position name here.
Okay, fine. Understood.
Now here position email has to be same as the hiring manager email. So in that case, I can pass the hiring manager email.
So those position parameters, we have to mention it in the HR record parameters also.
Yes. So if you see wherever it is, right now what we are doing is I have a multiple methods are there. Now I do not want to call this method outside of this. This method has to be called from this only. Because once the record is created, pass that hiring manager record here and then create a information. If you have that kind of a scenario, then what you do is if you need any other information, specify in the parameter for whoever is calling this hiring, create a hiring manager record, they have to pass the additional parameter, which is called as a position name.
Okay. So whenever we are calling the methods inside the method, means in the sub methods parameters, we have to mention it in the main method parameters.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Now, in case if you wanted to call it from the other source, then take out from here.
Yeah, that is the
Second scenario.
Fine.
Yeah. For second scenario, take out this, call it from the other source. But what you need to do is you need to return the value here.
So when we have mentioned the void, we can't return the value. No?
Yeah, when we mention the word, we cannot return it.
So in
Let's
both
say-
in both the methods, we have to we should not mention the void.
No, not the both the methods.
Only
Whenever you
main.
want to return the value, only that method you need to specify the what is the return type.
Okay. So when we are calling the method, in those methods, we no need to require, if it is void also, it is okay.
If you want to return any value, output of this method, if you wanted to return, then only mention the non-void.
Okay, fine. Understood.
Ma'am, I have a question here. I mean, the parameters which we are passing, right? Those are required parameters, means required in the object level, or
Required for creating this, not the
Yeah.
object level.
I mean, that is what I'm confusing, ma'am. I mean, required. So how do you check, ma'am? What is the internal mechanism, like how it
Now,
works?
for example, let's say here, position name, I'm returning it. Okay. Now,
Okay.
there are some times these parameters does not talk about the object level. Now, hiring manager object, whenever I wanted to create a object, so that time I need a few details which are required. That is a different part. But if I wanted to execute some logic, if I wanted to execute some behavior or some set of logic, I wanted to execute it. Let's take an example of mathematical operation. For mathematical operation, what I'm doing is I'm doing the multiplication. For multiplication, I'm expecting the parameter x and y. That doesn't mean that I need a multiplication addition. This is object for required. No, this is in order to execute a set of instructions within this method, I need this parameter. Right? So
Right.
that set of instruction, that means in order to execute this, we need this parameter.
Right.
Now, what you are writing inside this, it's up to developer.
Okay. Yeah, got it, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? This is very important to get a clarity because this is how we do it in the real time. In the real time, we call the methods from the different places. And when you call it, if it is expected any IDs, the new record, sometimes in the scenario, real-time scenario is like we need to create an account. Once the account is created, then we need to create the opportunity, related opportunity, we need to create it. So in order to create an opportunity, account ID is a mandatory, right? So that means wherever we are creating the account ID, that ID has to be passed to this. Now this is the two ways you can do it. Either you can call the method directly from the method one, or else you return the value of the method one and then call the method two. Any questions? Anybody who is not clear yet? Okay, then. Yeah.